All right, how's it going, guys? We're gonna look over a little arm and shoulder training today, more of an arm emphasis because that's a big focal point of mine right now with a little bit of shoulders on the back end. So we're leading off here with the lying cable curls. Big favorite of mine, just did a video on it. I'll link it in the video. But you can see here I'm just kicked back on the floor using the cable, using my adjustable lat pull down grip with the D handles and really focusing on that full range of motion stretch, very strict with the curl and controlling the negative all the way down. And this one is just really good for putting a lot of tension straight on the biceps. So that's why I like to lead with this one whenever I've got it in the rotation. So starting to slow down a bit here. I think I've got a little rest pause. Yep, taking a little break there, feeling those a bit. And then I think I get two more here. Yep. Now this last one was a bit of a grind. Yeah, that left side especially barely got through on that, but made it all the way through, still controlling that last negative. I think that's super important all the way across the set, but particularly towards the end. If you can barely get that last concentric, you've still got the strength to get the negative. So I really like to focus on that. So finished off that last negative with some good control there. And then I'm moving from this supersetting right into some overhead tricep extensions from a leaning position. So getting myself set up, I'm just using the same weight here as I did for the curls. That seems to work pretty well. Getting a big stretch overhead to really stretch out that tricep, getting that full range through it for as long as I can. This is one towards the back end. You'll see me really start to milk the lengthened partials a bit, which for certain movements I think works really well, especially these overhead extensions. So just because my triceps die out from the full range of motion doesn't mean there isn't some that they can get towards the stretch, that last little bit there. Yeah, I think I get, let's see, yep, that's where I call it there. Might could have gotten one or two tiny more partials there, but that felt like a pretty good place to call it on those. But I'm gonna go back to the curls because for my last set of curls, I did something that I've recently started to incorporate, which is just the eccentrics, just the negative. So I've bumped the weight up. It's kind of hard to see, but I've bumped it up another 20 pounds from what my work weight was, which is a weight that I might be able to get one or two reps of the concentric on, but at this point, this level of fatigue on the third set, probably couldn't even get one. But I can still get plenty of negatives with it. So you're gonna see me set up here. The setup's a little funky, but I found a way to make it work pretty well. I'm just kind of jamming myself up into the rack there, almost like a squat position, elbows on the thighs, pushing myself into it, and then just controlling that negative as slowly as I can, really feeling the biceps take that weight on the way down, and then just doing none of the concentric to where I'm purely focusing on the negative. And I've done this now the last few sessions. This is my third and final set of curls, and I'm doing them this way. I'm really liking incorporating these. I've incorporated on a couple of other movements. And with a little more time and practice on these, I'll probably do a video on this specifically because so far I'm really liking this method. It's a good way to overload it, really, control that negative and get some good work in that position with a weight that you just wouldn't be able to do otherwise. I think there's some value there. Mike Mincer, I know he's a pretty controversial figure in bodybuilding. I don't think that he's spot on about everything, but he preached the importance of negatives, and I definitely think he was onto something there. And we're starting to see a lot more information about how vital that portion of the rep is. So all I'm doing here is focusing on that. So that was my third set of those, and we're going to move on now to the next superset, which is preacher curls to start. So I've got the bar laying in the rack there, pop it up in a position using the ab mat preacher pad, which I really like a lot, and really, again, focusing on big control in the negative, especially on these preacher curls, where I don't think preacher curls are some big dangerous movement, but it is a little more intense on the elbow, on the biceps tendon there where it connects in. So always a good idea to control these, in my opinion. Pretty much getting full range of motion, but if you find some elbow sensitivity there, it might be wise to even shorten range of motion slightly at the end, just for a little less elbow stress. But for me, these feel good as long as I control. So you're starting to see these slow down a good bit here. And that's what I'm looking for out of these reps. I want to really get to those where I'm having to fight through it hard. That's where the big stimulus is for muscle growth. So this last one, almost comes to a stop there in the middle. Barely able to get it up. give myself a second, and then even though I'm not going for another rep, I'm really controlling that negative down and then putting it back to the rack to let myself rest. Again, no reason not to control your negative on your last rep. It's just another opportunity to get a little more stimulus in. It might not seem like a big deal just in the context of one set, but you do that over multiple sets, over multiple sessions, and I genuinely think that there is just that little extra boost that you can get just from controlling the negative on your final rep. So I really think that's a good idea to do there. So moving from that into some rope pushdowns. So it's not the best angle for being able to tell, but recently I've started coming in pretty close on my rope pushdowns to where it's really up against me, and I'm really feeling more of that medial head of the tricep get a lot of stress and stretch there that I'm liking. So up close, keeping it very close to the body, elbows back, going through, on triceps in particular, I really find that they're good for doing those lengthened partials. So I'm gonna get this full range as long as I can, but that lockout really dies out, but I still have plenty more work left in the stretch position that I can get. So still got some full range going on here. Yeah, it's starting to slow down a little bit. You'll see me start to get into these partials here. Yeah. So just milking out whatever I can at the end here, staying super strict, no body language, just the triceps. And yeah, there's the last one there, just getting that tiny little bit left. And so I bounce back and forth with the preacher curls and with these rope pushdowns. I'm not doing any of the overload negatives right now on the triceps. I just think the biceps are a little bit easier to set that up, but I'm looking at some different variations for triceps because I am curious to incorporate the negatives there too. But the triceps I just kept normal, concentric and eccentric. So this superset, instead of doing 2 sets of traditional curls and then one final set is just eccentrics, I only did 1 set of traditional curls. I did 2 more sets of eccentrics only. And so that's what this is here. And I'm just resetting that same way each time, using the full body to pop it up, controlling it down slow, back to the rack, and then reset. I bumped the weight up another 25 pounds here to, again, this is something at this point, this level of fatigue, I don't think I could even get 1 concentric here. But doing it with this method, still very strict and controlled, being careful that once it's at the end range, letting myself lean back down and take it to the rack safely. But this is a way that I can just, again, overload it some more, really put some stress on the biceps that they wouldn't be able to take otherwise. And I don't have any elbow issues here, any sensitivity. If this is something you want to try out, be careful, be smart, be reasonable about it. But I think that this is a great way to do this if you have a similar setup. With a traditional preacher curl pad or preacher curl machine, it might be a little hard to get away with that resetting each rep. But with this preacher pad, I find it's perfect because it just sits in the lap. And like you see me here, you can rock into position, get it, control it down, rock back to the rack. And so that's worked really well. So I got a couple more sets there. A little bit lower rep typically on the eccentrics. I meant to say that earlier with the lying cable curls. On these eccentrics, I'm trying to stay in more of a 6 to 8 window. It's a little bit higher on the 8 side right now because I'm not as heavy as I possibly could go on these. I do find it's a little harder to be able to judge exactly when you should stop the set because, you know, I'm still controlling it, but it just starts to get faster and faster. So I'm having to find where that sweet spot is. But yeah, so a little bit heavier with these, and because of that time under tension, going a bit lower rep. So now we're moving back to the lying cable and we're doing reverse curls, focusing purely on the forearms at this point. This and preacher dumbbell hammer curls are my go-tos for working the radiobrachialis here, the outside of the forearm. You'll obviously get some bicep and brachialis as well, but that's what I'm really focused on here at this point. This just lights those up deep into the elbow there. And no eccentrics only here, just 2 sets of traditional positive and negative, really getting it until same thing, it starts to slow down. I like to give myself just a little bit of rest pause on the back end there to make sure that I'm just putting in as much intensity towards those final reps as possible. And that's where that one starts to die out and then finish there. So final movement for the forearms. When I train forearms, I really just focus on the radiobrachialis and the flexors. So I've got some wrist curls going on here with a little different variation that I've been liking. So I'm doing it on an incline bench, focusing more on the stretch. Almost, I kind of think of it as like the preacher curl version of a wrist curl. I'm really taking my time on the negative again, nice and controlled, to make sure that I'm getting the work that I want there, but being a little more careful on the wrist because this is a bit more stressful on the wrist joint. I don't find it to be painful, but there's more stress there in that stretch position. So if you're trying these out, which I highly encourage because I think they're really great, just make sure that you're taking your time, you're easing into it. You can play with what angle works best on the bench. I just set my incline at the same incline that I would do for my incline chest pressing work, which for me is a moderate angle, not super steep. Getting that big stretch here all the way into the fingertips and then up as high as I can, and starting to see these slow down a bit, really working your way through that stretch. And that's where it feels like the preacher curl to me. And I think that might be the final one, yep. And then switching sides. Still a little careful on these because I had a wrist issue going on a while back that is pretty much fully healed, but not pushing to quite the 100% 0 reps in reserve or lengthened partials that I would on some of my other movements, just to make sure that the wrist is staying okay, but still getting some damn good work in there and really feeling a huge pump in the forearms after these, especially with all the other curls that I've had going on. So finishing up this last set here, I'm on the other side, and same thing. I like to, you see me there with the hand on the forearm, I like to do that a bit to just feel the muscle going through its work. I find that that helps with a little bit of mind-muscle connection, which, you know, some people say is irrelevant or whatever. I don't think it's a major, I don't think it needs to be a major focus, but I think the mind-muscle connection is certainly something that anyone trying to push bodybuilding to a high level should have to really focus with intensity exactly where they're trying to get the work. And so I think that just that tactile feel, that touch can help promote a little extra mind-muscle connection there. So that's something I like to do. All right, moving into shoulders, we're all done with the arms. So starting here with the rear delts with Powell Raises, which is a movement I plan to do a video on itself because I love these. I don't see a lot of people talking about them. And with how much value I place in the weighted stretch, this accomplishes that perfectly. It's the same as if you were standing here and doing like a rear delt sort of stretch, except you're lying on the bench, dumbbells in the hand, and the dumbbell is pulling that rear delt into that lengthened position. And then if you focus on just getting the weight out of there with the rear delt itself, you get a lot of good work. First time I did these, my shoulders, my rear delt specifically, were pumped in a way they had never been before. So really encourage you to try these out if you haven't given them a shot. With the form, you can see I'm holding onto the rack there for stability. I've even got my foot kind of wrapped around the bench a little bit, because you do rock through this a little, as you can see me doing there. And obviously you don't fall off the bench as you're performing this movement. So as I get to the end here, you're going to see it really starts to become into partials, just like with the tricep work. This movement is perfect for that. You can just squeeze out those extra reps at the end that are not much range of motion, but they're all in that stretch. So it's really good hypertrophy stimulus still. And I take these pretty high rep. I've gone a little heavier than this. This is just the 15. I've gone up to the 20. This doesn't take much weight as long as you're doing the form right, in my opinion. And then finishing up with medials, just a basic seated lateral raise. I'm doing it from the seated position to keep it very strict. I'll do them standing sometimes, but I do find that as I try to grind out those last few reps, it's easy for that bit of lean to start happening. That's okay, not the end of the world, but I prefer to keep it more strict in the same way that I do my lying cable curls instead of standing. So finishing up with these guys here, I raise them fairly high. I'm not doing like a Lou raise all the way overhead or anything, but I like to raise these fairly high. I used to be in that mindset of you could only go immediately by your side for whatever reason, but I find that as long as you have the shoulder mobility, you're just getting a little extra range of motion there. That's still a ton of medial delts. The front delts aren't taking over just because you went a few inches higher. But as this starts to fatigue, you'll see that the range of motion starts to become a little bit shorter, and getting just those last few with a little bit of partials there. I could have taken that a little further with some more baby partials, But like I said, I'm being a little more careful on my shoulders right now since I'm still just getting back to targeting those directly. I went a little too hard in my first session and felt some stuff that I didn't love. So still got some partials towards the back end there, but as I build that up, you'll really start to see me milk that back end a bit more. And yeah, that was the end there. So I had 3 sets of laterals with the 15s. I think that was a little lower rep range than the Powell's, more like 10 to 12 reps there. And that's the workout. So majority arm work, biceps and triceps, followed up with forearms. I always hit forearms whenever I'm doing an arm workout. A lot of people think that you'll get plenty of forearm work just from the secondary training of the arms and of your basic pulling movements. For some people you might, but I genuinely believe if you're trying to get the most out of your complete arm development, then if you're only focusing on secondary work for your forearms, you're only going to get secondary results. So I've found that isolating the forearms has been extremely important. So upper arm, forearms, shoulders, that's the workout for today. Thanks for listening, guys. I'll catch you in the next one.